What's good, team? Evan here for Grips.com, continuing with my review of the key takeaways and the big revelations I had from playing in the UCOP. So the second major revelation I had from playing in the UCOP was that goal setting is the game changer. There's a reason why guys like Phil Ivey and Tom Dwan made bracelet bets for, millions of dollars if they were able to win a bracelet. It's because simply playing the World Series of Poker preliminary events wasn't enough to stimulate them, and it really wasn't worth their time compared to what they could be doing, what they could be making playing a big cash game. So by adding those, bets, those targets, those additional payoffs, it actually gave them the motivation to follow through and play in those events that otherwise they would have had no interest in. The other benefit for them, obviously, was that winning bracelets is really strong for one's reputation in the poker world, but a bracelet on its own wasn't enough to motivate a guy like Durr, so he needed to add some money to the picture. Goal setting, adding additional payoffs, has the ability to turn a completely mundane task into something that's actually quite stimulating, because suddenly the reward is something that interests you and is actually worthwhile. And that's what happened with the UCOP. Normally playing a $100 freeze out every day, the schedule had some 200s in there, but for the most part, the average buy was about 100. Playing one of those every day and playing one table all day for potentially like 6 to 8 hours is not going to be something that stimulates me as a poker player and as a person. But what they did for the UCOP was they said, if you can get the most points overall in this series, we'll pay you 10,000 euros. 10,000 euros was enough to, raise a couple eyebrows for me and get me interested. The other thing about the challenge was that it was a reasonable amount of time. It wasn't too long. UCOP was spread over 8 days, and I felt that, I had what it took to grind all in for a week. If the case were, 3 weeks of playing like the WCOOP was, there's no way that I could have done it, because that was just too far outside, my version of reality for me to do. From going of not having played for a month because I was taking a break from the World Series to going and playing 3 weeks for potentially 12 plus hours a day. No, that was too much. But 6 to 8 hours a day with a couple of extra long ones for 8 days, that was something that was doable. And with that, I want to talk about the ABCs of goal setting. I know I talk about goal setting a lot, and I make it seem like it can be this big complicated thing, but I'm going to break it down to its simplest form, and that is the ABCs. So the first thing about a good goal is that it has to be attainable. If the goal is unattainable, if it's outside, what you're capable of, you're going to give up very quickly because you're going to see no light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to just say, this is impossible. How could I ever complete this? So a really good exercise when it comes to setting your next goal is to take what you've achieved in the past and aim to improve on that by 10 to 50%. Anything more than that is something that's going to feel unrealistic and too much of a challenge, and therefore going to prevent you from achieving your goal. The B in the ABCs of goal setting is that it has to be big enough. The payoff or the reward for completing the challenge has to be big enough, or you're just not going to follow through. If the payoff's too small, you're going to say, what's the point? I could make that much doing something else, or I could achieve the same satisfaction doing something else. So whatever your goal is, make sure that the payoff for doing it, either the payoff that comes from doing it or the external payoff that you add to it by creating a bet or something, is big enough that it's worth your while to actually engage in that activity for the extended period of time that your goal is spread over. And the C in the ABCs of goal setting is that the goal has to be challenging. Because if the goal isn't challenging for you, it's not going to be stimulating, it's not going to be engaging, and it's going to feel like a complete waste of your time, which in reality, if you're not challenging yourself, it probably is. Likewise, if the goal is too challenging, we're going back to the A of the ABCs of goal setting, in that it's no longer attainable, and therefore it just simply isn't going to happen. So once again, the ABCs of goal setting are A, attainable, B, big enough, and C, challenging. So as I mentioned, if you're used to setting goals or you're used to tracking your results, the easiest way to set an achievable goal that is big enough and challenging is by taking what you've achieved in the past and aiming to improve on it by 10 to 50%. Some areas in the realm of poker where you can look to make these improvements are your win rates, the number of tables you play, the number of hours you get in on a session, how many hands you get in on a month, or how much time you spend studying and reviewing your hands. If you are not used to setting goals or you don't use any software that tracks your results, I would implore you to invest in something like this if you're serious about your game. The easiest way to set an attainable, big enough, and challenging goal is to look at the averages of what other successful players in the format have reached in terms of, the numbers, the key measurements, and to aim for somewhere between 50 and 80% of that. You can also look at the average players as opposed to the elite players and aim to hit like 80 or 90% of that. But that way you're doing something it's clearly attainable because someone else has done it. It's big enough because it's in a field that you want to get into, and it's challenging because you're comparing yourself to people who have been successful in this field as opposed to people who are complete beginners. So if you're going with a previous goal you've already worked on, aim to improve on your performance by 10 to 50%. And if you're comparing yourself to someone else for setting your goal, aim to achieve 50 to 80% of what they've accomplished. And if you find that that's just too much, too fast, if you're a complete beginner coming in totally fresh, then set the bar much lower. Aim for 10 or 20% of what they've achieved, and then just reevaluate that each week and raise the bar each week or each month so that you can experience growth and further development and work closer towards the big goal, the dream, whatever that may be. Also, when looking at poker or outside poker, if you've got something that you've been putting off, a really good technique to motivate you to do that is to add either a reward in the form of a bet or a punishment in the form of, if you don't follow through on what you said you would and wanted to do, that you pay someone a certain amount of money or have to do something embarrassing, whatever it is, to motivate you away from not doing the thing to ensure that you actually do it. So this week's homework, or today's homework, to ensure that you get the most out of the goal setting experience, is to write in the comments section what your goal is, what the one thing that you're going to work on and try to improve by 10 to 50%. And then a week later, I would like you to come back to this video and respond to that comment with how much progress you've made and how you feel about that progress. Continue that process of coming back each week and responding to that comment. And when you're done with that, you know what to do. Take what you learned, go out there and get stacking.